You're listening to the Resilient Author Podcast, the show that goes beyond the pages to explore the grit, courage, and resilience it takes to write and publish a book. I'm your host, Kary Youman, and each week I sit down with authors to uncover the stories behind their stories, the challenges they faced, the breakthroughs they experienced, and the wisdom they've gained along the way. Whether you're working on your first chapter or celebrating your launch, this is the place to find inspiration and practical takeaways for your own author journey. Let's dive in. In this episode of the Resilient Author Podcast, I sit down with Joel Conwell, a former pastor turned tech professional, leadership coach, and the author whose work bridges emotional intelligence, storytelling, and authentic leadership. Joel's journey is one of transformation, from writing poetry as a child to publishing Your Missing X Factor and The Boy in the Tree. His work explores what it really means to be authentic in a world obsessed with performance. Together, we talk about how to express confidence without ego, why vulnerability is a superpower, and how self-awareness can shape both leadership and creativity. Joel shares how narrative therapy helped him turn a childhood memory into a children's book, and how that moment of courage opened the door to deeper creative freedom. We also talk about discipline as a form of resilience, the tension between parenting and purpose, and how to stay grounded when life feels unpredictable. This conversation is a reminder that authenticity isn't about image, it's about integration. When we stop performing and start being, we not only lead better, we live better. Listen to this episode to learn how to find your own X Factor, the intersection of certainty, positivity, and altruism, and how to bring more of who you are into everything you create. What are Your Missing X Factor and The Boy in the Tree about, and what do you hope readers and families take away from your work on leadership, courage, and vulnerability?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, the Your Missing X Factor was my first foray into published work when it comes to actual writing. And I realized, because it was a corporate culture book, and I realized no one really reads those unless you're famous. So that's fine. Hey, we'll have to learn somehow. But then what ended up happening though too was, I have 3 kids and I read kids' books to my kids all the time. Sometimes the same book over and over and over and over and over again, depending on if it's good, and if it's not, you try to hide that so your kids don't ask for you to read it again. I realized I was a captive audience in that sense of, some of these kids' books were really good and they would even impact me. And I thought, man, we need more books like that, because the first book, Your Missing X Factor, was really just about how to help people. Yeah, it's you can play the corporate game without being a jerk, but it's more like, how can you be yourself authentically in a way that doesn't feel like you're gonna be behind the 8 ball in these networking situations, interviews, just getting to know people. Like, how can you be yourself, but also talk about yourself in a light that you don't have to worry about putting yourself down? Because I think that's a hard part for a lot of people is, when you talk about yourself, what do you say? Do you caveat everything with I'm not trying to be about me, but this is what I've done? Or do you talk about your accomplishments? Or are you afraid people are going to immediately think, oh, this person just only cares about themselves? They're talking about themselves. Or do you only ask questions about other people? Do you always deflect? And so I had come up with this tool called your mantra statement. And it essentially utilized the 3 most attractive attributes that we find in people. And those are things like certainty, positivity, and altruism. And it just means, if you think about it to yourself, anytime you meet someone, let's just think of the opposite. If you meet someone and they are negative, self-centered, and completely flip-floppy, I guarantee you're 100% going to be never want to talk to this person again. Too soon would it be not to talk to this person again, right? So you automatically run from those people, but we run to the people that are positive, altruistic, and certain, because, we're attracted to it, because the world is oftentimes negative. The world is oftentimes selfish, and the world is oftentimes in turmoil. And so we're attracted to people that go against the grain in that way. And then I help people develop what's called your mantra statement, which is utilizing those 3 attributes in a way to talk about yourself that feels genuine, but also leaves more to be desired in a good way, right? And so you would say things like, I'm someone who is energized by being refreshment to everyone in every interaction, no matter what. I just want to build people up, never want to break them down. I want people thinking I can't wait to talk to him again, right? That's clear enough to tell people enough that they need to know about me, but also then they might wonder, like, what do you mean, like refreshment to people, or can you connect that to things like your resume? Because you could say, and it makes me think about my time as X, whatever. Like I worked at a nonprofit, I ran a nonprofit, or I was an engineer at this company, and I was doing this, and so immediately, what you're trying to do with what I did with that book was try to help people shift that you're not what you do, right? What you do is just simply a logical progression of who you are, right? And if you look at your resume, those are just bullet points of here's what. It's not just look what I've done. It's no, I am this person, and because of that, these are the things that I accomplished. And so that was the hope to do that. And when I started to see when I was working on the boy in the tree, was that there's a disconnect between parents and their like emotional intelligence and understanding themselves emotional intelligence, and then being able to help kids walk through that, because today is just insane. I mean, social media is ripping out the innocence from our kids, and then also not even enabling them to really even stop to think, right? Everything just is coming at them so fast. And so that's what I tried to do with kind of going from or connecting the You're Missing X Factor to the boy in the tree, because the boy in the tree is more about a boy who gets stuck in a tree, who loves climbing trees, and he gets stuck and he's so embarrassed because his dad has to come save him, and his friends, make fun of him, and it's this whole thing. And subconsciously or consciously, he says, I'm never having that happen again. I never want to be embarrassed. Um, I don't want to feel out of control. I don't want weakness, right? I want to be able to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so that's what he does. He grows up, and the book kind of says he grows up trying to live that way, controlling things, people, whatever he can, so he's not embarrassed or he doesn't have to show his weakness. But then he realizes that that's just kind of part of life. Like you're going to have to be okay being weak, because everyone is. No one is so perfect and so strong that they never fail. And that's also part of what makes life awesome and beautiful is you take risks, right? Very similarly to kind of what you're doing. Like you're doing a podcast, taking a risk, starting a podcast, reaching out to authors, getting them on your podcast. You don't know if they're going to be good. You don't know if it's going to bomb. This episode is going to be terrible. And you're like, crap, I don't know. Is this going to be good? You're taking a risk. But the problem is that kids, especially today, and I harp a lot about this in my circles, but social media really forces kids to add this thought in their head that they never were meant to have, which is like, well, what if it gets out? What if someone takes a video of me and it goes online? And I'm thinking that was never supposed to be a thought in any kid's head, right? You just live, you just do whatever. You're silly. Who cares, right? We all are cringe in some way. And that's because that's part of life. You're just fun. But you should never be thinking, yeah, but what if someone like gets a video of it? And then they get shared and people bully me or whatever, so that's where like You're Missing X Factor and The Boy in the Tree kind of intersect or like progress. And then that's kind of what the two are about. Sorry, that was a very long answer to a short question.
No, no, let's unpack that. I mean, I guess I kind of want to go back a little bit and just ask, like, how did you even get started writing, and when
Yeah.
did you realize storytelling could be a way to connect both, as you were saying, head, heart, and business and humanity?
Yeah. That's funny. So I've always loved writing. I thought, I've loved poetry when I was in middle school, high school, because I think that I learned a lot of the classics. And back then, you got some really cool imagery. I've always loved how people use imagery to convey things that are different, just not just a simple idea, but a complex idea. And, I could make a joke. I probably started writing, and the most cringiest stuff was when I would write like depressing notes on Facebook back in the day when you could write notes and they'd be on your Facebook profile. Thankfully, they got rid of those because they were so bad. And then I wrote a fan fiction for a movie from 1995. That was hilarious. But I loved writing and I loved storytelling. And I've always been a musician and a songwriter since I was a kid as well. But it was interesting. The corporate culture book really was like that straw that broke the camel's back in a good way, or the thing that kind of broke the dam forward, because I was at my job and I was talking to someone because I had found out she'd written a book. And I was like, yeah, when she speaks a lot. And I was like, how do you even do that? What does that look like? And it was very kind of her to say it, but she said, no one's going to take you seriously unless you published a book. So you can have a great idea, but unless you have published a book on it, no one's really going to give you that much time a day. And so that was what kind of pushed me into it. And I think you can understand this too, right? A lot of people will talk about doing things. Not everyone does it. A lot of people will say, I'll start a podcast. Not everyone does it. A lot of people say, I've always wanted to write a book, but never do it, right? And so when you actually do it, there is just a little bit of respect you get onto your name, and credibility and authority that gets added to your name, because it's like, well, out of the 100,000 people who said they would do it, you were like the 100 people that actually did it, And so that pushed me into writing the first book, which was Your Missing X Factor. And that was so cool because I feel like everyone needs that. They need like the first time they do something to show them that they can do it. And then once you've done it, you never have to second guess yourself. Like, well, I don't know if I could, because you've already done it. And so when I was the Boy in the Tree really actually came from, and this is a lot of like where writing comes from in my life is I was going to counseling for stuff that I was working through. And I have a master's in counseling. So I've always been someone who kind of ponders the like philosophical world that we live in the sense of like, there's always some more meaning in things. You can always find stuff, I don't just see like rain. I see like an idea for like a story, right? Rather than just like, oh, there's rain or like lights or anything. I can imagine a story or an analogy or something from anything, right? And I can connect it. That's just always how I've been. And so my counselor said, well, because you're a writer, like, let's work through this trauma that you've talked about in your past, which he made me go through, like, what are all your traumas you've been through? And I'm going, I don't know. And let's start at the beginning. I'm 34 right now. And I'm like, I don't know. I can't think back to when I was younger. I don't even remember. And he just goes, well, what was something you didn't like? I said, I don't know. I got stuck in a tree. And he goes, well, let's focus on that. So we talk about being the boy in the tree. And that was a real story about me. And to his credit, he said, why don't you write a poem? Because you're a writer. You've already published a book. You've written songs. You think like a writer. And this is technically like a form of therapy called narrative therapy. But he was just like, why don't you write a poem about it and see what happens? And I wrote this poem and I brought it back to him for the next session. And he said, this is actually really good. And then once I finished it, I brought it back to him again. And he said, Joel, you have to publish this as a kid's book because this has such a cool message and it's close to home for you. And that was it. Like, honestly, it was Your Missing X Factor was letting me know I could do it. And The Boy in the Tree was an affirmation that this is what I'm really good at. And this is what I want to do this till I die kind of thing. And like, this is who I'm wired to be. Right. Because I think sometimes you kind of do things and you wonder, like, am I in my wheelhouse really? Right. But I think very few people get those affirmations that tell them you are in your wheelhouse. Like, this is it. Go for it. And like, really, hey, this is it. Like, do not hold back. Don't don't try to have a plan B. Like, just go. And for me, that was The Boy in the Tree because the reception has been fantastic. And then, what was so cool was when I kind of heard that from him and I started doing that with The Boy in the Tree, it was like the floodgates were open. Like I said, I could think of books and ideas to write. And that's also what helped me realize, like, so I've been working on a sci-fi trilogy in the background. Like, that's fun. That's a ton of fun. I've got more kids books. Like, I have a kids book that will come out in probably a year or so. That's like the sister book to this called The Girl in the House. Like, it's nonstop. Like, it's just always there. There's always ideas. And I don't know if you're like this, but I feel as if when you find what you really love to do, you never put any type of obstacle or blockage on it. Like, any idea is a great idea, right? Mm-hmm. And you should explore every idea because you never know. Like, that might be the thing that you really love it. And hopefully you've even heard, like, I've said nothing about becoming famous or making money. Because to me, if it really is going to happen, that will come. And if you're only focusing on that, it's not going to be the best that it could be, and it won't be yours. And so I focus on telling really good stories. And if that comes, if fame and money comes, that's fine.
I just want to say shout out to the people out there who can see our greatness and, sort of push us in a direction to do the things that light us up. I want to just take a quick little turn back to Your Missing X Factor and ask
you. Keep going back. I'm so sorry.
No. This is great.
Like, well, just talk about the first book, Joel. Just shut you out to talk about the first book. Got it.
No. This is great. I love talking to authors who have a couple of books. Why do you think so many high achievers, especially in leadership, struggle to ask for help, admit weakness? Yeah. It's almost like this armor. What do you think that is?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, so it's funny. The kids book, I've had parents that have read it who are high achievers, who have said, I identify with The Boy in the Tree, because I think it really is just as a part of, specifically, I think, American culture, which is, you just grind. And when you're grinding, it's like you go down two paths. You either tell everyone that you're grinding it out and look like you look great, and that's that mentality. You got that grind mentality. Everything is suffering for good. You got this. So you have to talk about the grit and show the grit, or you don't talk about your stuff until you've done it, until you've made it. which both are like incredibly isolating, right? So if you're on the side that doesn't talk about the grind, that means you'll never have someone believe in you and get to say like, hey, you actually are doing a great job. Keep it up, right? You're just grinding quietly, which means you're suffering in silence. Or you're suffering, but everyone has to know it to make you look better. And I think that's the problem is we felt like to make it, you have to go one of those ways. And then also that's the lie itself that I think is killing a lot of high achievers. Why high achieving have to equal being a millionaire, billionaire, anything like that, or having cars or house or whatever? Why can't a high achiever just be? So if you're a high achiever in your home as a dad, like, okay, your kids know that they're loved and they look forward to seeing you and you are able to balance the priorities well between your kids and work and your wife and all that kind of stuff. Like that's a high achiever. There's no money there, right? Or what if why does a high achiever have to be like in work? It means you get a promotion and promotion and promotion. Or what if you just are supporting the company in a way that makes them money, that you do your job diligently and you're someone who just, I don't want a promotion, but the problem is, and specifically in American society, is we believe high achiever equals high compensation, high notoriety and reputation. And we lost a lot of what the high achieving is supposed to be, is where it starts with you and your family, right? You're called to be, as a dad and a husband, I'm called to be the best that I can be in those two areas first. Like that's my area. And then that will expand out. And the problem is there's no money or acclaim or anything in that. In society, like, well, there's no money and acclaim in being a great dad, a husband. So there is, when you are really good at your business and you're cutthroat and you climb to the top, people take notice, right? I've had many friends who've been frustrated because, the different circles, you'll have CEOs, right? And whatever. And the second you see CEO in someone's title, we immediately go, oh, okay. All right, CEO, and all it is a title. It's just a title. I have counseled back in the day. I have counseled recovering addicts because I did that for my internship when I was in master's. I counseled recovering addicts who were CEOs and they were very successful. And then they gave into addiction and it destroyed their life. So like when I look at them, I don't see someone who gave in and then their life was destroyed. Right. But the problem is we see that title and we go, that must be like a person above me. They're obviously better than me or more reputable in some way. And it's like, no, it's just a title, So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It does. And just going a little bit deeper into that, I know just from this podcast, I talk to a lot of different authors who have some form of resistance, whether it's internal, sometimes it's external. What would you say has been one of the larger obstacles that you faced while writing this book, and how did you move through it?
Yeah, honestly, I would say mine is more internal, right? Because mine is, funnily enough, very, very in line with The Boy in the Tree, because it's me, is that the idea of like hedging your bets. Like, is it really going to be successful? Are people really going to like this book? Why do it? You don't need more books. You go to Barnes and Noble and you see all these books, or you go to Amazon, you see all these books. Like, who cares? Why do you need to add your voice? And that's just that negative self-talk that I developed as a result of like all those years of kind of, not realizing that I was trying to control the narrative around me and hedge my bets. And so for me, my greatest obstacle is myself saying, why do it? Like, okay, cool. It's a good idea, but is it really going to be that good? Are people going to like it? To combat that, I literally put my money where my mouth is. Like when I was working with my publisher and we were looking at illustrators, I didn't just pick the most expensive one because he was the most expensive, but I picked him because he was just better. And I knew that to get the better product, I would have to pay a little bit more money for the illustrator. And then it turned out that we have become friends and I'm going, yeah, you're going to be the illustrator on the next book and maybe more. Like we've established a relationship, or when I did my first book launch event in the upstate where I live in South Carolina, I went all in. I rented inflatables, massive inflatables. I paid for a coffee cart, this really good coffee in the area. Like I did all this stuff because I said, I'm going to believe that this is going to be a success rather than saying, no, well, it didn't really go well because I probably could have done more. I was like, no, I did everything I could think of that would make this a success. And it was. And so I had to push past that obstacle, which was just myself.
Mm. You mentioned being a father of three, being a husband. How do you balance that with creativity? Do you have a pretty strict schedule when it comes to writing?
Yeah.
How do you work all that out?
I honestly, it really is because I think do you have kids too?
Yeah, I've got two.
There you go. My wife says this a lot. She jokes that the life of a parent is just like constantly pivoting. You're just always pivoting. You can never say, this is how it's going to go today. You will never be able to do that. And the more kids you add, the worse that gets in a good way. And so you're always pivoting. I feel like I've done really well in pivoting when I can be creative. There was a time when I first started writing, when I was working on the kids' book, and then I was working on the sci-fi books in the background. When I would put down my girls, we'd do all that stuff. We'd read, we'd pray, and everything. And then I would sit in their room as they settled to sleep. I was on my computer and I would just write. They knew what I was doing, so it wasn't like I was just sitting on my computer randomly. I'd write for about 15, 30 minutes, and they'd be asleep by that time, and I'd leave. Some other time during the day, I might write another 30 minutes. That way, I got an hour every single day. If you get an hour almost every single day, that's 5 to 7 hours every week, which is can go really far if you're writing consistently. But now it's different, right? So now I have my two girls, and now I have a little bit over than a 1-year-old, and I put him down. And so what will usually happen is like I'll be holding him as he's starting to sleep. And then on my phone, I'll think of ideas. And I love using AI to kind of like go back and forth like a publisher, like an editor. I'll be like, okay, so here's my idea for another book. What do you think? And I'll say, yeah. And I love that I've trained it to go, yeah, it's in line with your brand. Right. And so then I'll explore it. I'm like, okay, so let's explore some illustration ideas or art ideas and stuff. And then we'll go back and forth. And sometimes now, because my kids are a little bit older, they'll do their own bath times or shower, but I'll be there to help. And then what I do is I'll just sit down while they're in the shower or taking a bath, and I'll write for 10 minutes or whatever. And then that will be my writing time, you know? And it's just pivoted that way. You know, before it was, yeah, I'd have a little bit more time at night with them, or now I'm with, you know, while I'm kind of next to them. And then I always try to write at least like 10 to 15 minutes at bedtime, because it's a really good way to like get a lot of the creativity out of there. And I think that's a big part for me that's helped me is I don't, and it's the same thing with songwriting. You can't force it. You have to follow whatever way it's going. And so for me, you know, I finished the Boy in the Tree, and publishing a book is such a weird experience because you finish the manuscript and it's done, especially with a kid's book, it's done. And then you're just kind of like, okay, like what now? You're waiting for the things so the illustrations have to be done, but you're not writing anymore. You're just done. And I realized that I needed to continue to let myself chase those creative ideas. And so for me, it's been the sci-fi trilogy that I've been working on, because I have these ideas and excitement, and then I let myself use that and leverage that and chase that. And so then I'll be writing that. And that helped because then it constantly was keeping my creative juices flowing, but also excitement going, which I think is difficult for some writers. Is, you know, you have that moment, you're done, and then it's like, well, now what? And then you might start to be banging your head against a wall, like, well, I need another idea for a kid's book or whatever. When in reality, it's like, no, chase. There might be something else. If you have an idea, chase that idea. And that might be the thing that you get your creativity going. And then you go back to something else that was similar. Right. And so that's how I've been able to do it, is like pivoting in different seasons with kids, not keeping myself like locked in, you know, like today I'm only going to work on the kids' books, or, for this section, I'm only going to work on it. If I only want to work on the sci-fi books, that's all I'm doing. Because I'm not going to force myself. I'm not going to say, no, you can't. We decided today was the day. I let myself go with what I feel like is going to be best use of my time. So
Wiped out, and you like, how do you handle that? How do you work through that?
Man, that is a very good question. And my wife would love to know that you asked that, because she cannot stand the fact that I'm like usually the one that goes, okay, we'll just change whatever. She's like, no, at some point you still have to have plans and you have to do it. You cannot dictate it. You know, so like today, my son did not have a good nap. And it was like, okay, well, I was going to go meet someone to talk about creative stuff and talk about music. And I was like, I can just tell him I can't go if you want me to help, because I know you wanted to do something during his nap. She's like, no, you're gonna still do your plan, and then I'm just gonna figure out what I'm doing on this side, right? And so it is. I think part of it also is your partnership with your spouse, specifically as a parent, is like, you know, being able to say and keep each other accountable in that way, like to not let you just, okay, we need to change everything, and be like, no, you already had your plans. I'm okay. Or like, hey, I have flexibility in my schedule, so I can change mine. Like if I was going to go to the gym or something, I have time to go later and I'll be fine. And then I can help so that you do that. Right. And so I think it's more that if you're others focused enough, I think it's easy, but it's hard when you're selfish, and you have to be okay to, and that's actually another book idea that I have also in the background, which is how as you get older, and you progress through life, you're supposed to be forced to be more selfless. So, as you become a parent or as you get married, you and your spouse live. It's not just you. You now have a whole other person's life to think about as you live. And then you add kids. Definitely not your own life anymore. Now you have to be even more selfless. And then ideally, as you become a grandparent, that keeps going, right? You become even more selfless because now you have more time. You're not probably going to be working as much. So you actually have more time to help your kids and their grandkids and, help out and be there, right? Because the family was supposed to be more connected in that way. But it's gone against that in American society where it's like, once you become a grandparent and your kids are out, like the kids are out of the house and you become a grandparent, like maybe you'll help out, but you're retired now. So go have fun. And it's just not, like you said, sometimes you just got to pivot, and it's like life is going to ask you to do things. And if you're not around, like it makes me sad to think of grandparents who aren't around their grandkids. That could be, that like if they were able to be, but they're just not because they're doing their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely very
Sorry, you
different.
didn't ask for that. That was for free.
No, I definitely appreciate that. I've definitely been juggling parenting and just being a creative. It's
It's
definitely
tough.
a dance. It's a dance for sure.
No.
So a lot of your writing, Joel, you talk about leadership, you talk about vulnerability. I think there's some people out there who understand what leadership is and understand what vulnerability is, but what does it actually look like to model vulnerability? Whether as a parent, partner, or a leader. Can you speak to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I think the best way to describe it would be that you don't act like you are perfect or that you have everything together, but you are still able to rise to the occasion, right? I think that's the difference. Good leaders will admit when they're wrong in the right way, right? I've been in corporate America enough to see leaders do it the wrong way, in both ways. Either they never admit that they're wrong, or they're way too transparent, and it's just
Mhm.
now we're kind of friends, right? Like you want your leader to be someone you can trust. That when the chips are down and things go crazy, they're the one that's resilient, right? Which I love about your podcast. It's about the resilient author. Like they're the ones who you can trust. Okay, if I'm gonna falter, you won't. Now, you may be faltering internally, or you may stumble and have some issues, and we may see them, but in the end, we can trust that you are going to be the one that still pushes through, right? And I think that's the difference. Like, so I'm honest with my kids, I had a really good conversation one time with my daughter because she was having a really rough night. And later that night at bedtime, she said, I just was so tired today. And when I'm tired, I get angry. I said, Lucy, that's me. And that's been me this whole week because I had been up with Edmund for many nights so that my wife could wake up and work out early. And I was so tired and so at the end of my rope. And my daughter then goes, "Yeah, you were up with him. Like, so, how does that work? Don't you sleep?" I said, "So that mommy can work out loose. I decided that I would do that, but that's part of it. That's part of the sacrifice so that I can love your mom that way." And I think that's part of that. That's showing that. So you're saying, as a leader, you're giving the reason. What's the reason? So that I can serve my wife and you, right? But then also yeah, I feel the tension when I'm tired of wanting to. I'm more irritable. I'm more prone to anger, and that's that vulnerability. And I think a good leader, even in corporate America, could do the very same thing. Like a lot of corporate America right now is volatile. I've been through many layoffs at various companies, and it's okay to say, "Hey guys, like I don't know what's going to happen, but I want you to know that whenever anything does happen, I'm going to be as honest as I can be, right? I'm going to be as gracious as I can be as kind as I can be. I'm going to be as clear as I can be. And if you have any questions, you can always ask me. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to try to find it, right? I'm going to do whatever I can to help you out in that way." But you're open about that. But you're also open, but there is an element of, at some point, my hands are tied because I'm not the one making these decisions in some way, right? And so, but we've lost that. We've lost that because we've gotten in the way with procedures and stuff like that, or leaders feel like no one's going to trust me or look up to me if I'm vulnerable, and because they think like vulnerable is having a breakdown in front of your employees when that's not what it is.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, there seems to be just sort of a fine line. Like you said, you don't want this super extreme, nothing gets in my way, but you also don't want the person that's just telling you everything.
right.
It's definitely an art. Hmm.
Yeah, I
So
wouldn't want the CEO of a company to be like, "Oh my gosh, this person in like whatever is terrible. I can't stand them." Like, all right, okay, but like at some point, please don't run the company into the ground. I need a job, right? So anyway, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, you mentioned earlier you had a colleague who said people won't take you serious until you publish a book. How has publishing a book actually impacted your work? How has it impacted your relationships? And has it changed how you view what a leader is at this point, now that you are a published author?
No, that's a really good question. It's interesting. It's kind of like a medal that, so my sister has done a couple Ironman. It's just she has the medals from doing an Ironman, right? Or it's like if you were an Olympian or whatever. Um, you have a gold medal from being an Olympian. Does it change anything about your day to day? No. But at someone more likely than not will be like, that's impressive.
Mm,
And then also, it's something you can look at, right? So when you're doubting yourself, and because weeks are not easy, days are tough. And as a parent, there are days where nothing feels good and you don't like what you're doing and you don't feel like you know what you're doing and you're despondent in some way. And, but if you have like a medal to look at and say, no, 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 like, okay, this is just a season. Like it's not forever. It's just for now. I've been resilient. I've done stuff. I've worked through it and finished something. I am not what the lies say I am or what others might say I am. I know who I am because I've done that stuff. I've pushed through. And so it's a really cool kind of reminder to you, especially as creatives, because it can be really difficult to be resilient, right? And you can forget how far you've come. And so for me, it's really good to like, I can just look back and say, I've published 2 books, then which usually it's harder for anyone to even get one, let alone 2. Usually people are one and done just so they can like sell books and whatever, or they get discouraged because no one cares half the time. And you're going, well, I guess this isn't what's going to happen, right? But 2, I've published 2 books and I'm going to publish 3 and I'm going to publish 4 and I'm going to publish like to me, what that changes for me in my day to day is it gives me something to kind of grab onto sometimes when I'm not feeling steady. And then when it comes to work and relationships, yeah, like it is a big deal. So when I'm on calls, like I've even been on calls or interviews and I have my book here, like I have my kids' book. And what's been so fun is I just forget it's there. And I always joke that like my publisher makes me keep it in my shots, which is just really funny. I'll be like, I have to do it. I'm sorry. My book's there. My publisher says anytime I'm on a video call, I have to have it. And they laugh and it's funny. But what's so funny is I'm almost in every single interview I've ever done in the past 3 years since publishing any of my books, someone orders a book. Yet it's not like I'm getting money. It's more just that, it's someone that sees that's a big deal, recognizes the impact and the significance, and then affirms that. And so does it change really how I work day to day? Not really, but it's such a fun connecting moment for me and new people I meet, or even just with friends that I've known, because you get to see that there are more people willing to support you. You might even wonder. And so, yeah, I'd say that's how it kind of intersects in all the different areas of life. Hopefully that
mhm.
answered. You asked such great
Yeah.
questions. I feel like it's like, man, I got to answer really well because they're
No,
so
I
good.
mean, I mean, it feels very natural. So I appreciate you saying that. I mean, you're a great guest. You said a couple things, but it really resonates with me in terms of what you said about the book, because there are days where I feel like I'm getting my butt kicked, and when you can just look up and say, wow, I did publish that book, like something in you kind of wakes up and reminds you that I can do hard stuff. I can keep going.
Yeah.
So I love how you frame that. You also mentioned steady. And, resilience shows up different for everybody. Sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's faith,
Right.
sometimes it's compassion. What if you're open to sharing, what practices or habits like ultimately help you to
Mm.
stay grounded and keep you just leading from a place of authenticity with your family, at work? I know this is kind of a multiple question, but
Yeah.
any practices or habits you can share?
Well, yeah. I mean, faith is a big thing for me. It's funny. I used to be a pastor, feels like forever ago. Faith has been a big part of my life for a long time. And, the Lord has brought me through so many crazy situations in my life, whether it's journaling. So I have been journaling since I was a senior in high school. And I think so you can't really see it, but all the way on that top shelf, right in the corner, is about, I think I'm on my 21st journal now.
Oh,
And
wow.
I've been journaling almost every day since 2009. And so like that has been a discipline. It's just writing. So I was writing my thoughts, writing how I felt about them. Um, and what I've learned is that has it's like a muscle, like it's muscle memory. So just writing down how I feel, what I'm thinking about has I just thought that was natural. And then I have friends or family or acquaintances who I interact with who are like, it takes me, like, I have to slow down. I have to stop. I don't even know how to process things. I have to go to counseling because I can't even think about things on my own. I don't even know what to do if I was to think about it. And I'm going, so you're telling me you don't just stop and you're able to process things like that? Like, no, that's just not how people think usually. And that's what that discipline did. Was journaling enough meant that, like, I could process something that was happening quickly enough to be able to then speak to it, right? Which I think makes a really good leader. I remember back in the day when I was a pastor, someone said that the best leaders, best pastors are readers and journalers, because they can speak to things, they know things, they've learned things, but then also they're able to process those things quickly. And so that they're able to kind of like have that intuition in a moment. So that's a discipline, right? In my faith, reading the Bible, doing things like that, but then also like exercise. Exercise is huge because I've been doing exercise since I was young, but now I used to own a CrossFit gym for a bit. Now I just coach CrossFit on the side for fun and still work out. But what I have seen more often than not is that there are people that are shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to resilience because they've never done anything hard physically. And if you've never done anything hard physically, like literally, you're going to have a soft body, and soft bodies are not good. Those things get hurt. They get sick really easily. They don't look good half the time, right? Like, but it's just not good. You are not setting yourself up for health, right? A hard body, don't have to be jacked and shredded, but a hard body is someone that's been tested through breaking down muscle and building it up. That's resilience, right? And so, if you can go into the gym and do something hard, then you know that you can go home and do something hard too, right? And that's what disciplines to me are about. It's about doing something difficult consistently in a way that helps build up the other elements of your life and other disciplines, right? Discipline is not just compartmentalized into one thing. It permeates all the different aspects of your life. And so the discipline of working out benefits the discipline of journaling, which benefits the discipline of reading, which benefits the discipline of spending time with my kids, right? So those are the various disciplines that I've kind of had, and I've had for a long time. Working out been a part of my life forever, since doing sports, journaling since being a senior in high school, reading and all that kind of stuff, and writing. So yeah.
I talk to a lot of leaders, I talk to a lot of authors, and I swear all of them journal. I think there's something there to your point. When you do that enough, you get much more clarity around what you're thinking, and it does make you more, I think, just in tune with people, more in tune with yourself. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you saying that. Going to wrap up here soon, Joel, but a lot of the listeners here, some of them have stories about personal stuff, some of them have stories about professional stuff, but it's like they almost feel stuck. They don't want to be too personal, or they don't feel like they're an expert. Do you have a message or just advice for someone who might be sort of between these two worlds, who has a story but doesn't really know how to get it out?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you just start. Whatever it is, you just start, And like I said before, you kind of raised your eyebrows, which means I know you know what I'm talking about. We live in a crazy world now where AI is incredibly powerful, and you have a built-in professional sounding board at your fingertips that is free. So, and you can tell it to be honest. Sometimes that kind of gasses you up, and that's fine, but you can tell it to be a little more brutally honest. But you can say, hey, this is my idea. Like, what would be a really good way to convey this idea while balancing vulnerability and professional, whatever, right? Because here's the problem. AI, for the most part, is being used by annoying professionals on LinkedIn posting stupid posts. And it's so obvious it's AI, or on Instagram or whatever. And it's annoying. It's stupid. Don't do that. Seriously, if you have hyphens in your posts still, everyone knows. All right. And please do not post something that is like congratulating or acknowledging someone that is so clearly AI, because that's like sending someone a Hallmark card and not writing anything and just leaving whatever it says in it. Like, that's what you give to them. You never add anything personal. It's just, here's the card.
Happy
Come on.
birthday.
That is the modern day equivalent of just giving someone a card from the grocery store without adding anything personal in it. So that's the bad way to use AI. The good way is to ask, like, here's my idea. How would you connect these two? And then just go back and forth. You never stop at one prompt. You continue to grow it and keep working back and forth. And so no one has an excuse now, I think. And that's not to be mean. It's just you don't have an excuse now to be like, well, I don't know how I could do that. You just ask AI now to help you work through that. And then that's your starting point. And then you go. But you just have to start. Whether or not you're worried that no one will care or you won't know how to say it or it won't sound good, if you automatically have already said that and you aren't starting, it's never going to happen. You have to stop yourself from stopping yourself, right? You have to give yourself the chance to just try to start. And once you've started, you might like more of what you are doing and saying more than what you thought. But if it's all up here, right, and it's never out in a way that you can look at it and ruminate on it in, a pivot or change or edit it, right? If it's only here, it's guaranteed it's not going to be what you like, or you're not going to give yourself the chance to really show it how beautiful it is. Because when you just keep it here inside in your heart and your mind, and you never put it out there, it never has the chance to impact someone else and yourself. If I had never done The Boy in the Tree, I'd never have the opportunity with my neighbor who cuts my grass, and like she's really kind, but she's just this old lady that likes to like help people out, and anyway, but she's a little bit more rough around the edges. And she read the book. She was going to give it to her niece, and she said, she texted me later. She was like, I haven't stopped crying since I've read this. I have like a lump in my throat. I can't even swallow like this. It hit me so deeply.
Wow.
And the cool thing is, so she's, let's say she's rough around the edges, kind of like on the lower economic side. And then there was this wealthy woman that I know that I gave the book to as well. And she said the same exact thing. And I'm like, okay, I never would have had that opportunity if I kept it inside and said, no, I'm not going to do it, right? Your life is not your own in the sense that like you have so much more of an impact around people and the people around you, not just money wise or fame wise, but like your story could be the difference in someone else's life that gives them life and brings them to a clarity or a victory over something they never thought they'd have, and so like don't think too little of your idea that it can't have that impact, but also don't think too much of your idea that like it needs to be perfect, that it's like it has to be this amazing thing. Like it's so beautiful how some of the most imperfect stories have the greatest impacts.
Well put, Joel. We're pretty much at the end. If you could leave one just lasting message with our listeners, something that they can take with them long after the conversation, what would it be?
Yeah, I would just say give yourself the chance, whatever it is. I mean, if it's writing a book, if it's writing a poem, if it's telling a story, if it's starting a podcast, if it's whatever, you have to give yourself the chance, but an honest chance, right? Not the old college try, but a legitimate chance for it to succeed. Because you can't be upset if it doesn't succeed. And I'm not talking about money and I'm not talking about fame. You can't be upset if it doesn't succeed if you never really gave it the chance, right? Don't be that person who 10, 15, 20 years from now is talking with someone who's published a book or did a podcast or whatever, and you say the classic line, oh, I always wanted to do that. Don't be that person. Be the person that person says that to. That person goes, oh, I've always wanted to. Be the person that person says that to, okay? That's the goal. Give yourself the chance to be that person 10 years from now who says you did something and someone goes, oh, I've always wanted to do that. Okay? That's your takeaway.
That's good, man. Your kids are lucky to have you, man. I really appreciate your enthusiasm.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great, Joel. Where can people find your books and follow your work?
Yeah. Well, also we should just do this again. I mean, obviously I'm gonna have another book eventually, but like we could just do this again without talking about books. Because you're great too. You're fantastic. And as a former podcaster to a podcaster, you're chef's kiss. Great job. So the books you can find them anywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online right now. No brick and mortar, because I'm investing more in like pounding the pavement with libraries and bookstores, like local bookstores. I'm trying to go local first. But if you want to get it like chain, you can go Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. But you can follow me. So I've got Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I have a website, jconwell.org. My Instagram is jconwell. TikTok is Jane Conwell. I'm going to be starting a YouTube that I'll just be posting shorts and stuff. And I sometimes post content there. And you can just follow me there. You can follow me there on my personal page, and I just kind of post about life, or like I'll do live streams too. Is one of my favorite things to do. Is I'll do like a writing live stream, so I'll answer questions about something I'm working on, or I'll talk about like updates about how things are going in post book publishing and launch, and then I give people an opportunity on those live streams that if they like and comment, they can get in my sci-fi book, and I'll like add them to the story, and their name could be there. And I always ask them, do you want to be a good character or a bad character? And you never know. The fun thing is you never know how big of a deal your character might be, because one person had commented, and I know them well, and I didn't know that their character was going to be as big of a deal, but like I kept finding myself giving this character more and more to do, and now they're a main character in my story. Like, it's so fun. So I love doing that. So I love doing those live streams, and I usually do them about like once a month on a Friday night. But you can find out when that happens by following me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all that.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for sci-fi, Joel, so I have to keep my eyes open.
Oh, dude, well, after this, after we get off, we can talk, but also we can talk another time about it, because it's a really good book, I have to say. I'm biased, but
Right on, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the
Yeah.
show. And yeah, man, really appreciate you sharing some of your insights today. This was great.
Kary, you are incredible, and it was an honor and a privilege to be on this podcast.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning into the Resilient Author Podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you both inspiration and practical tools for your own journey. If you've been carrying the idea for a book, but haven't started, or you started and feel stuck, I'd love to invite you to join my 5-day Speak Your Book Challenge. In just 5 days, you'll speak the outline of your first draft and discover how to turn it into a finished manuscript and a published book. You can join anytime at voicetobook.co/challenge. Until next time, keep going, stay resilient, and remember, your story matters.